Okay, I told you to clap. You guys aren't listening. I'm not going to grade you on a curve.
Señores, en esta ocasión, MAGA ha dejado claro que es una secta. Durante una década, los seguidores de Trump han tenido el cerebro tan podrido que sin importar lo que Trump diga, sin importar lo que haga, sin importar lo que crea, siempre lo siguen ciegamente. Y ese vínculo, ¿no? Parecía irrompible. Hasta el momento. Porque este escándalo de Epstein ha llegado al corazón de la Casa Blanca de Trump. Se ha convertido en un punto de quiebre como nunca antes. A lo largo del tiempo hemos visto cómo MAGA soportó el intento de golpe. Soportaron las promesas rotas, las mentiras, pero en esta ocasión es algo diferente. Y lo mejor de todo esto es que es algo que está explotando en la cara de Trump de una forma absolutamente pública y bastante, pero bastante interesante. Pues bueno, señores, todo esto comenzó cuando Trump asistió a un evento de Turning Point USA. Y bueno, lo que ocurrió es algo inédito porque prácticamente recibieron una lluvia de abucheos de su propia base. Antes de que mostremos ese momento glorioso, quiero mostrarles algo, un clip que nos deja muy en claro qué tan enojada está su base leal de trumpistas. Escuchemos.
If you were in the Oval this morning with the president before he left for Kerrville, Texas, give me your top 3 things that you would tell the president of the United States that coming from a young person in the base and a dedicated worker and follower of his that you feel he needs to do right now.
We need to enforce the laws of this country, and like you said, Steve, there's no better question than who rules America. It's not the people. So we need to obviously have the declassification of the Epstein files.
You don't think Donald Trump as president, you would tell Donald Trump in the Oval Office that you think there's an open question with him as commander-in-chief and doing all he's doing, you would actually tell Trump you don't know, you question who rules this country?
I definitely would, because it's a blackmail ring, and anybody who wouldn't is not paying attention. Simply put, Epstein himself said that he was best friends on the stand with Donald Trump. So anybody who thought that these files were going to get just declassified because we pressured him enough or you voted harder enough is just lying to yourself, frankly.
Do you agree with a special prosecutor has to be an independent special prosecutor has to take over? Do you believe that DOJ and FBI right now, with the guys who we're all close to, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, do you think they have any credibility left to pursue this?
No, and I'll tell you exactly why, Steve, because in 2016, we trusted the plan with Trump, but now Trump has become the deep state. The exact thing we voted him in.
Why do you say he's become the deep state?
What is more deep state than covering up for pedophiles? Why would you go to that island? Why? Tell me, why would you go to that island? Why would you go on the plane? Why his top donors? Sorry.
Okay.
Why are his top donors neighbors?
Anybody agree with that?
Por primera vez, ¿no? Escuchamos a un seguidor MAGA decir: Donald Trump es ahora el Estado profundo. Y sí, señores, tengo que decirlo y admitirlo. Estoy completamente de acuerdo. Porque en realidad Donald Trump siempre ha sido, ¿no?, parte del sistema. Ese cuento de que él era un outsider, de que él estaba afuera, ¿no?, de que él era el multimillonario en contra de la élite, siempre fue una mentira para poder ajustar su narrativa. Pero la disonancia cognitiva del culto MAGA no les permitía ver la verdad. Por lo menos hasta el momento, ¿no? Porque eso, amigos, ha cambiado. Y ya no todos lo aceptan. Por eso vimos como personajes como Sir Megyn Kelly trataron de manipular al público para defender a Trump. Justo antes de que todo se saliera de control, gracias a otra presentadora de Fox.
We all have busy lives, and President Trump has a busy life, and I don't think he realizes how much she's humiliated the administration. This is a self-inflicted wound. She caused it. Again, I have nothing against Pam Bondi, but if you want to look for the villain in this story, we have found her. She is the person she's either lying now or she was lying then. There's no two ways about it.
Pero bueno, el momento cumbre, ¿no? La punta del iceberg. Llegó cuando Laura Ingraham, de Fox News, le preguntó al público en Turning Point qué pensaban sobre el manejo de Trump con el escándalo de Jeffrey Epstein. Y señores, la abuchearon sin piedad.
How many of you are satisfied You can clap. Satisfied with the results of the Epstein investigation. Clap. Okay, I told you to clap. You guys aren't listening. I'm not going to grade you on a curve. So I was going to get to that. How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation?
Sin duda podría ver ese clip todo el día, ¿no? Están furiosos, y con mucha razón. Claro que deberían haber estado furiosos cuando Trump intentó robarse las elecciones, cuando mandó esa turba violenta al Capitolio para linchar a su propio vicepresidente, pero bueno, al menos por fin despertaron. Y es que este escándalo, amigos, no se trata de una teoría conspirativa cualquiera. No estamos hablando de no fuimos a la luna, ¿no? Estamos hablando de un presidente que jugó y explotó con el dolor de víctimas de abuso, que mintió sobre su relación con Jeffrey Epstein, que utilizó las mentiras para ganar poder político. Y ahora, eso es lo que se le ha vuelto en su contra. Incluso dentro de la propia Casa Blanca ya hay quienes están desesperados por ocultar este desastre. Tal y cual lo explicó Ari Melber, las peleas internas ya son evidentes.
This is truly unusual breaking news. You know the breaking news animation, you know sometimes the news is big, significant, serious. This one is unusual. A major escalation in what is increasingly a kind of political, quiet, peaceful civil war, but a civil war of political proportions for MAGA over these Epstein files. And it's roiling the Trump administration at quite literally the highest levels. Sources detailing the ongoing clash over a fight that could cost someone their job. Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi clashing with the FBI number 2 official Dan Bongino. As everybody who follows these kind of stories knows, technically the AG oversees the FBI, but if you remember Comey or other strong-willed FBI officials, when you're at that number 1, number 2 level, they sometimes fight with the DOJ. Sources say Bongino is so upset about all this, he's saying maybe he'll just leave, which would be a very quick tenure, by the way, and he would be leaving in a sort of protest or criticism of Bondi's handling of the Epstein files. Other outside agitators, including Tucker Carlson, saying she's lost confidence, maybe she has to go. He was not at work today, reportedly. Sources also say Bondi and Bongino got into a heated clash Wednesday in a high-level meeting with him, her, FBI Director Patel, and Donald Trump's number 1 person who tracks all this stuff and makes the big staffing decisions, Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, who, of course, also ran the Victoria's campaign. Axios has a report on this where Pam says her piece, Dan says his piece, didn't end on friendly terms. Bongino left angry. And you don't need to be a scholar of reporting or Watergate level intrigue to know somebody in this small meeting is leaking this stuff to Axios if it's true. A source close to Bongino saying he ain't coming back. Out of control furious is the other quote. This destroyed his career. He's threatening to quit and torch Pam unless she's fired, said someone who, again, according to that reporting, spoke with Bongino. By the way, hire podcasters and right-wing media figures to run major parts of the government, and you may find major parts of the government are being leaked on and run like another piece of podcast content. I'll come back to how some of this does swirl around MAGA content. Other parts of it, of course, are serious when you think about the victims in the original Epstein case. All of this, though, occurred because the DOJ has fallen short of the pledges that people around Trump, including Bondi, made. There were many questions about the Epstein case. From the moment of his in-custody death, this news program, for example, has reported on those questions. There are some suspicious details. This news program has not done what a lot of the internet and MAGA right-wing sort of circles have done, which is assert without evidence what maybe happened and then wait for the government to confirm it. Now we're seeing significant backlash from MAGA, probably some of the loudest against Trump since he took office. Journalists, other people following Doge and Musk may be reporting one set of problems to the administration, but on the right, this is the big problem. All of this is because it was partly stoked by the very people who now say nothing to see here. They stoked this conspiracy which imploded on them.
Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now.
In Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
What names are in there, man? You understand how many powerful people probably want this thing to desperately go away?
The FBI airmailed into that operation and said, this is not getting out. because they do that because this is another government gangster operation.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Release the list. That's the now vice president. The list's on my desk, the attorney general. The government gangsters, quote unquote, are in charge of all this stuff. The problem is they caught the car. All those people talking up that way now have the goods. They're in the government. They used to be pointing their finger. They found it pointing at themselves, like many an old internet meme, and it's blown up on them. So this matters politically because one or more people may be out of a job. It matters in a deeper sense because we're seeing the limits of governing by clickbait or political conspiracy theory. It also could matter if any of it got back to the real questions about the Epstein case, not whether Pam Bondi was lying when she said she had an Epstein list or is lying now when the memo says it doesn't exist, but can't be both. Now, in the FBI, there's a wider dysfunction involving some of these same people who we know from what they're saying have been spending many, many days, a lot of their energy on a client list they now say doesn't exist. But the Times is reporting that the FBI is taking the unusual step of using lie detectors for loyalty tests, subjecting personnel to questions as specific as to whether they've criticized or, quote, cast aspersions on Patel, who you just saw in that other clip talking about gangsters. This looks like something from a movie or another era, but according to the Times, it's happening. And in Trump's DOJ under Bondi, there's also a purge because there are officials who say they might be targeted not for how they're doing their job, but whether they're insufficiently, quote, politically loyal to Bondi and Trump.
En mi opinión, personajes como Kash Patel, como Dan Bongino, están más preocupados por proteger su negocio, de venderle el humo al MAGA promedio, que por la verdad. ¿Y saben por qué? Porque estos tipos no pueden conseguir trabajos serios luego de haber trabajado con Trump. Kash Patel no va a ir a ningún think tank, no lo va a contratar ninguna multinacional. Su negocio prácticamente fue estafar a seguidores de Trump. Y si esos seguidores se enojan, pues el grifo del dinero se les acaba. Entonces, no se engañen. No están defendiendo principios, no están defendiendo valores, están defendiendo su estafa. Y eso es lo que se está rompiendo hoy. La confianza ciega de la base MAGA. Por eso, señores, este escándalo es tan poderoso. Es lo que nos demuestra, ¿no? Lo que siempre dijimos. Donald Trump es parte del mismo sistema corrupto al cual él decía combatir. Jugó con víctimas, mintió, manipuló, y ahora lo están empezando a ver. Y eso para Trump es más letal que cualquier acusación judicial. Porque sin su culto ya no le queda nada. Ahora bien, señores, pasemos a hablar lo siguiente. Al parecer el presidente puede despertarse un día y decidir cobrar hasta un 30% de impuesto a todo lo que entra de países como ser México o la Unión Europea, ¿no? Y solo porque sí. Donald Trump no solo lo pensó, lo anunció públicamente, como si fuese el dueño de la Constitución y no uno de sus servidores. Vamos a analizar por qué estas decisiones no solo son peligrosas, amigos, sino que también atacan al corazón mismo de la democracia estadounidense como la conocemos. Y no solo eso, ¿no? Sino que vamos a ver cómo jueces, congresistas y hasta agentes del gobierno están empezando a levantar la voz, preocupados por lo que está ocurriendo.
This week, we've seen him suggest he's considering taking over control of two cities run by Democrats, Washington, D.C. and New York. Heard a DHS spokesperson leave open the possibility that Democratic Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass would be arrested for showing up at a recent ICE sweep at a city park, and learned that the DOJ has actually opened up criminal investigations against two of Trump's frequent targets, former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey. And within the walls of the DOJ, there appears to be major unrest, as NBC News has learned that the Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino is considering leaving his job after a heated confrontation with Attorney General Pam Bondi on Wednesday over his frustration with how the Justice Department has handled the release, or lack thereof, of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Joining us now is Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat, who serves as the ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thank you for coming back to the weekend. So let me start at the end of that intro, and that is on the contretemps between Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, who's calling on her to resign or be fired. What do you make of this?
Well, Epstein was a sex offender. He ran a child sex ring. This is true. Donald Trump and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi all were demanding that these files be released. I echoed that demand during the Biden administration. Why should the public not have access to them? After Epstein took his own life, then the case was over. And at that point, this is a matter of public interest. All of this would have come out during that last trial, but it didn't come out. And all of it should come out. I sent a letter to the Attorney General saying all of these files should be released. Certainly the ones that mention Donald Trump, they should be released. How can Donald Trump get away with campaigning for the release of these files and the whole Republican Party be demanding it, and Pam Bondi say that there's a client list sitting on her desk, and then all of a sudden they want to wave a magic wand and make it all go away? So, look, I think this is a serious matter. It's not just about the division on the right. It's a serious matter that we should know what's on there, because either Donald Trump is covering up for himself, or he's covering up for other people, or he's covering up for the fact that nothing was there, but they made a whole propaganda campaign out of it, or he just wants to have leverage over the people whose names are actually on Epstein's list as being part of his child sex offender ring.
Congressman, you know, I want to get to what the Supreme Court Justice said, because as Jonathan put it, it is not normal. It's not something that we see to have Supreme Court justices talk about the government, or allude to the government, right? She didn't get into details, but they often don't even bring it up. They talk about like our country as kind of this like abstract thing that they're worried about. What do you think it says about where this country is that the Supreme Court justice felt the need to say that she wants people to focus on what's happening within our government?
Well, two remarkable things stand out to me in the justice's remarks in Indiana. One is that it's very clear that Justice Jackson is becoming one of those rare justices like Justice Scalia or Justice Brennan or Marshall, who saw themselves not just in their juristic role, but also in their role as speaking to all of society about the nature of our constitutional compact. And so she is stepping out of the role of just being a judicial interpreter, and like Justice Scalia, somebody who is trying to speak to society. But the second thing was that she used the word democracy, which of course the right wing never uses anymore. They don't believe we're a democracy. Anytime you mention the word democracy, the right wing says, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Of course, a republic is just a representative democracy, and we are a representative democracy that has become far more democratic over time with the expansion of the franchise to include African Americans and women and 18-year-olds and so on. We have fought for a stronger democracy. But what she's saying is that we've got groups of people in society, this is the way I read it, who are attacking democracy, undermining the right to vote, making it more difficult for us to have a rule of law, which is the operating system of a constitutional democracy. If we don't have the rule of law, it means whoever gets in power gets to do whatever they want, which of course is the Trump MAGA vision for our future.
Congressman Raskin, I would like to hear what you think about some of the comments of the White House border czar, Tom Homan, on Fox News earlier this week.
Look, people need to understand, ICE officers and Border Patrol, they don't need probable cause to walk up to somebody, briefly detain them, and question them. They just need the totality of the circumstances, right? They just got through the observation, you know, get articulable facts based on their location, their occupation, their physical appearance, their actions.
So, Congressman Raskin, that's probable cause he's just dismissing casually. And then you have Donald Trump, who posted on Truth Social authorizing law enforcement to arrest ICE protesters using, quote, any means necessary. What do you make of these developments for the rule of law in America?
It's plainly unconstitutional. There are constitutions on earth that operate like that, which say either there's a state of emergency, which can be unilaterally declared by an executive that then empowers the executive branch and the police and army to do whatever they want. There are some authoritarian constitutions which establish that as a norm. Neither of those is the American Constitution. Our Constitution applies in peacetime and wartime. It applies if we have a Democratic president or a Republican president. We don't have special exceptions which say the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply if Donald Trump is president. We don't have exceptions which say, well, if we're dealing with immigrants, the Constitution doesn't govern and due process doesn't operate. Justice Scalia was someone emphatic about that point, that due process operates both for non-citizens and for citizens. I've got MAGA colleagues who say to me, well, you don't think we've got due process for guilty people, do you? And I just have to crack up because we don't know if they're guilty until there's been due process. And that's what due process is all about. That's what the presumption of innocence is all about. That's what probable cause and the search warrant requirements are all about in the Fourth Amendment.
Congressman Raskin, I want to get your reaction to some breaking news that is happening right now on the president's social media platform, where he announced 30% tariff rate for the European Union starting on August 1st. That was while you were answering the first question at the start of this block. And then as you were answering Elise's question, he announced the same 30% tariff rate on Mexico. Your reaction to that?
Well, maybe I should stop talking because it sounds like he's completely out of it sounds like he's completely out of control. Look, the International Court of Trade, the American court system has been uniform and emphatic about this, right? Congress, under Article 1 of the Constitution, has the power to regulate commerce among the states and with foreign nations. Congress has always been the one to control tariffs and in limited cases has delegated power to the president. Now we've got a president who claims he's got the power to impose tariffs on the entire world, except for Russia, of course. But he's got the power to impose tariffs on everybody for whatever reason, including in the case of Brazil and Bolsonaro, because he's mad at the government there for actually holding his alter ego in Brazil to account for trying to overthrow an election a la January 6th. And then he goes ahead and just imposes these extraordinary tariffs on the people of Brazil. He thinks he can do whatever he wants, but that's not our system. And the courts have said, look, the Congress has not delegated that authority to the president. If we tried to say the president can impose whatever tariffs he wants, that itself would be an unconstitutional delegation of power to the president of the United States. We can't give our lawmaking power over to the president. So, look, we've been winning the vast majority of these cases in district courts and in appeals courts. Our problem has been in the Supreme Court on some of them, not on all of them. We need all of the courts to uphold the rule of law here and say the president is just finger painting on the Constitution. He does not have the power to impose these tariffs. In the Brazil one, for example, he was saying, well, I'm imposing this because of the trade problems they've caused for us. We have a $7.5 billion trade surplus with Brazil. And he just decided to impose it.
Bueno, ¿qué es lo que acabamos de ver? Simplemente un presidente que actúa como si tuviera superpoderes constitucionales. Donald Trump anunció un aumento del 30% en los aranceles a productos de la Unión Europea y México, y lo hizo sin consultar a nadie, sin una justificación clara y sin respetar quién es el que realmente tiene el poder para tomar estas decisiones, que es el Congreso de los Estados Unidos. Según la Constitución de los Estados Unidos, es el Congreso quien tiene la autoridad exclusiva para regular el comercio internacional. El presidente, como tal, puede recibir ciertos poderes delegados en ciertas situaciones específicas, pero este tema de imponer tarifas globales y arbitrarias sin tener una base legal ni una economía sólida, hablamos de que es una violación flagrante a la separación de poderes. Ahí, como vimos, salió el congresista Amy Raskin diciendo algo que debería ser muy obvio, y esto es como pintar los dedos en la Constitución. Pero claro, cuando vemos que él está acostumbrado, Donald Trump, a saltarse las reglas, hacerlo frente a cámaras parece casi una moda, ¿no? Y lo peor de todo esto es que Trump no solo lo hace, sino que también lo utiliza como un arma política, ¿no? Porque en un momento mencionan, ¿no?, que castiga comercialmente a Brasil por defender a alguien cercano a él. O sea, ¿es en serio, señores? ¿Un país entero pagando por una decisión judicial que no le favoreció a su amigo? Eso no es política exterior, eso es una venganza disfrazada de política económica. Sé que algunos podrían decirme, bueno, Trump está defendiendo a Estados Unidos en el comercio global, que otros países también ponen barreras. ¿Por qué no hacerlo nosotros? Miren, si otros países usan tarifas, eso es cierto, pero no todos lo hacen de manera ilegal, arbitrarias y personalizadas contra quienes no les caen bien. Ya solo con eso vemos una diferencia. Además, una cosa es negociar acuerdos comerciales. Otra muy distinta es utilizar el cargo que tienes como presidente para poder castigar a países enteros por motivos personales, motivos políticos. Y la diferencia es que en una democracia, incluso los presidentes tienen límites. Y Donald Trump está borrando sus límites uno por uno. Para mí queda muy claro, Trump no solo está jugando con fuego, está quemando bases mismas de la democracia estadounidense. Las acciones que él está haciendo no solo afectan a otros países, ojo, esto termina debilitando la confianza en el sistema político y la confianza en las instituciones. Mientras algunos jueces, legisladores están intentando no frenarlo, muchos otros, al parecer, prefieren hacerse los ciegos. Y eso, amigos, es muy peligroso. Así que les pregunto a ustedes, ¿hasta dónde creen que tiene que llegar el poder de un presidente? ¿Qué opinan de que Trump decida tarifas solo por un capricho, ¿no? O por una venganza política? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final. Recuerda, como siempre, darle like, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.